Did you know that there are mandatory disclosure laws that govern bedbugs? Landlords are prohibited from showing or renting vacant units when the landlord knows that there is a bedbug infestation. My name is Miguel Soto. We'll be going over Chapter 7 of the Real Estate Principles book, Property Management. In this chapter, there are two main concepts that we learned. The first concepts are the types of leaseholds, and the second concept is the termination of a lease. There are four types of leasehold estates. The first one is estate for years, and we'll be going over the first two because these are the most common ones that we'll be using as real estate agents. The first one is estate for years, and the second is estate from period to period. The third one is estate at will, and the fourth one estate at sufferance. Now the first two will be the main ones that we will be using as real estate agents. We'll go over the first one, which is estate for years. Estate for years essentially means a contract that is within a certain amount of a fixed predetermined length. And a estate from period to period is a contract determined at a fixed month to month, year to year, or week to week. So it would vary, and this would be more of a rental agreement, and this is another topic that we'll be going over. So now that we mentioned the rental agreement, we're going to go over four factors that are needed four minimum factors that are needed in a rental agreement. And we can use the acronym LAND to remember the minimum four factors that are needed in a rental agreement or a lease. The first one is the length or the duration of a lease. How long is the lease going to partake? The second is the amount of the rent. How much are you going to pay for renting or the property? Number three is the names of the party. Who is renting the property? Who is the tenant and who is the landlord? And the fourth is the description of the property. How many rooms, the size, etc. The second key concept that we learned in this chapter is the termination of a lease or rental agreement. And there's actually 7 ways to do this, and we're going to go really briefly through every single one of them. The first one is the expiration of the lease. That means the terms of the agreements are up and the lease is expired. Then the second one is the lack of quiet possession. The tenant has a right to be to enjoy quiet and uninterrupted stay on the landlord's property. So that could be a reason to terminate a lease. The second one is repairs for habitability. Habitability. Hope I said that right. And that means that the premises are not in livable conditions, in bare minimum livable conditions. The next one is eviction. So when there is illegal acts on the property, that's when the lease can be terminated. Surrender and abandonment. This is another important one. So when the person that's in the property surrenders, they voluntarily give up the lease, and the landlord has to accept the surrender. If there is not a formal surrender, then that is what we call abandonment, and that is when the landlord does not approve of a surrender. And so those are very distinct definitions of surrender and abandonment, and it could get quite confusing, so those are important to know. The last one is, or there's 2 more: breach of conditions and destruction of the premises. Breach of conditions is you essentially broke the conditions of the contract you signed in the first place, and the destruction of property is when you have damaged the property. So pretty self-explanatory, but these are 2 key concepts that we learned, And those are the types of leasehold estates and the termination of a lease.